The morning humanity discovered they weren't alone in the universe started like any other day. Dr. Sarah Chen was sipping her coffee at the SETI Institute when the signals began pouring in. At first, she thought her equipment was malfunctioning. The patterns were too perfect, too structured. But as she called her colleagues over one by one, their faces showed the same mix of wonder and fear. This was a message from the stars. Within hours, every radio telescope on Earth was pointed at the source. The message repeated itself in perfect mathematical sequences that even a child could understand: prime numbers, geometric ratios, and finally, a language key. It was an invitation to talk. The response from Earth was carefully crafted by a team of international experts. They sent back their own mathematical sequences, followed by information about human civilization. The reply came almost instantly, and with it, humanity's first glimpse of the Nexer Empire. The images they sent showed massive ships that looked like floating crystal cities. Each vessel was a masterpiece of geometric perfection, with surfaces that reflected starlight in mesmerizing patterns. But it was the beings themselves that took everyone's breath away. Creatures made of living crystal, their bodies arranged in perfect symmetrical patterns that seemed to defy the very concept of organic life. "We are the Nexer," their message stated in the now decoded language. "We have ruled this galaxy for 500,000 of your years. All species we have encountered have either joined us or fallen. There is no third option." The United Nations hastily assembled an emergency session. Representatives from every nation watched as more messages arrived, each one revealing both the incredible achievements and the chilling nature of the Nexer Empire. They had conquered over 10,000 species. Their technology could reshape planets. Their ships could travel across galaxies. And in 500,000 years, they had never lost a war. Dr. Chen was among the scientists chosen to study the Nexer's transmissions. "Look at this," she told her team, pointing to a pattern in their communications. "Every response, every decision they make, it's all based on perfect mathematical optimization. They don't just use computers, they are computers." The Nexer's disdain for human biology became clear in their subsequent messages. They viewed organic brains as primitive, messy things that relied on chemicals and electricity to think. "Your neural processing is inefficient," they stated. "Your thoughts are corrupted by emotions. Your decisions are flawed by irrationality. You will be given one standard galactic year to surrender your world and accept our guidance." This is generous. Most species received 1 day. Military leaders around the world began preparing for war. But how do you fight an enemy that's been undefeated for longer than human civilization has existed? The Nexer's confidence was absolute. They had run billions of simulations of potential human responses, and in every scenario, they emerged victorious. But as humanity scrambled to prepare their defenses, something strange happened. The Nexer's predictions of human behavior kept failing. Where their simulations showed humans would react with fear, they found courage. Where their models predicted surrender, they'd found defiance. For the first time in 500,000 years, the Nexer encountered something their perfect crystalline minds couldn't compute: the beautiful unpredictability of the human spirit. The clock was ticking. 1 galactic year to prepare. 1 year to find a way to defeat an undefeated enemy. 1 year to prove that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't perfect logic, but the messy, emotional, irrational spark of human determination. Colonel James Martinez stared at the holographic display showing the Nexer's battle formations from their previous conquests. For the past 3 months, he and his team had studied every piece of information the crystalline empire had shared about their victories. The aliens were proud of their perfect record, so proud that they freely showed humans exactly how they had crushed other civilizations. "They're not just showing off," he told the gathered military leaders from around the world. "They're following the same patterns every single time. Look here." He pointed to 3 different battles, each fought thousands of years apart. They always positioned their ships in perfect geometric patterns, always attack in exactly the same way when they face similar situations. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had first received the Nexer signals, stepped forward. "That's because they can't help it," she explained. "Their crystalline brains are like the most advanced computers ever made. They always choose the mathematically perfect solution. To them, doing anything else would be impossible. Like trying to believe that 2 plus 2 equals 5. In a secret facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, humanity's best minds worked day and night. They found more patterns in the Nexer's behavior. The alien ships never wasted energy with unnecessary movement. Their weapons always targeted the most critical systems first. Their shields were distributed with perfect efficiency. But then someone noticed something odd. "Look at this," said Lai Wei, a young game theory expert. He pointed to a simulation of a previous Nexer battle. In this fight, the defending species did something completely random. They deliberately crashed one of their ships. The Nexer's entire attack formation fell apart for 3.2 seconds before they could recalculate. The discovery sparked an idea. The team began running their own simulations, but instead of trying to beat the Nexer at their own game of perfect strategy, they began testing the strangest, most illogical moves they could think of. The results were shocking. Every time they introduced true randomness or actions that defied logical explanation, the Nexer's response time slowed. It was like showing a master chess computer a move that broke the rules of chess. It needed extra time to process the impossibility. Meanwhile, in a laboratory in Tokyo, scientists made another crucial discovery. They had been studying the small crystal samples the Nexer had sent as part of their cultural exchange. Dr. Yuki Tanaka found that while the crystals could process information faster than any computer on Earth, they had one major weakness. They couldn't handle true chaos. "It's like their brains are allergic to randomness," she explained to the world leaders over a secure video call. "When we expose them to completely random patterns, not just complex ones, but truly random ones, the crystal structure actually starts to vibrate in distress." As the first half of humanity's preparation year passed, a plan began to take shape. The Nexer's greatest strength, their perfect, predictable logic, could also be their greatest weakness. But using this weakness would require humanity to do something that went against all military training. They would need to be deliberately unpredictable. They would need to make moves that made no strategic sense. "The Nexer have run billions of simulations showing how they'll defeat us," Colonel Martinez told the United Nations Security Council. "But every single one of those simulations assumes we'll try to fight them logically. They've spent 500,000 years perfecting their strategies against enemies that think like they do. But they've never faced an enemy willing to throw logic out the window." The question was, could humanity's military leaders, trained all their lives to think strategically, learn to think illogically enough to confuse a perfect enemy? The Nexer arrived exactly when they said they would. Their crystal ships appeared at the edge of the solar system, a fleet so vast it looked like a new constellation in the sky. Earth's telescopes showed them arranging themselves in perfect geometric patterns, just as they had done in every battle for the past 500,000 years. Admiral Sarah Rodriguez took a deep breath as she looked at the holographic display on the bridge of the EDF Prometheus. She was about to give an order that went against everything she had learned in her 30 years of military service. "All ships," she said into the comm system, "execute Operation Chaos." What happened next would confuse military historians for generations to come. The human fleet split into 3 groups. The first group began flying in spiral patterns that made no tactical sense. The second group appeared to have engine troubles, their ships tumbling end over end. The third group started broadcasting old episodes of children's cartoons on all frequencies. On their crystalline command ship, the Nexer leaders struggled to process what they were seeing. Their perfect tactical computers tried to analyze the human strategy, but there was no logic to find. It was like trying to solve an equation where all the numbers had been replaced with pictures of cats. "Your behavior is incomprehensible," the Nexer commander transmitted. Your ships are wasting energy with unnecessary movement. Your formations have no strategic value. Explain yourselves." Admiral Rodriguez smiled and sent back a response. "Sometimes we just like to dance." The Nexer's attack began exactly as humanity's analysts had predicted. Their ships moved forward in perfect formation, targeting the most strategically valuable human vessels first. But they quickly ran into a problem. They couldn't tell which human ships were valuable. Some of the most advanced warships were pretending to be cargo vessels, while simple shuttles were acting like battleships. That's when the humans launched their real attack. From behind Jupiter's moons came a group of ships that looked like they were held together with duct tape and hope. The Nexer sensors showed they were barely functioning, which is exactly what the humans wanted them to think. These ships had been deliberately damaged on the outside, but were perfectly fine on the inside. They looked like they were about to fall apart, so the Nexer's tactical computers classified them as non-threats. That was their first mistake. The damaged ships launched their weapons, but instead of targeting the Nexer vessels, they shot at empty space. The Nexer were confused for 3.2 seconds, just like in the simulations. Those 3.2 seconds were all humanity needed. Hidden weapons platforms that had been disguised as space debris came to life. They didn't fire at the Nexer ships. Instead, they created a chaotic web of energy patterns that played havoc with the crystalline being's sensors. Some human ships deliberately crashed into each other, creating clouds of debris that didn't follow any predictable pattern of physics. The Nexer fleet's perfect formation began to break apart as their commanders tried to process the chaos unfolding around them. They still won the battle. Their technology was too advanced for humanity to defeat them completely. But for the first time in 500,000 years, they suffered significant losses. As the Nexer fleet regrouped, they sent a message to Earth. "Your tactics defy all logic and reason. You have damaged our ships by behaving irrationally. This is unacceptable." Earth's response was short: "Get used to it." In their first battle against humanity, the Nexer had learned something they had never encountered before. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the strongest or the most advanced. It's the one your enemy doesn't understand. Captain Maya Patil watched her ship's engine core temperature rise into the red zone. Any reasonable captain would have shut down the engines 5 minutes ago. But Captain Patil wasn't trying to be reasonable. She was trying to save her crew. 3 Nexer warships had cornered the EDF Challenger near Neptune. The crystalline ships had positioned themselves in a perfect triangle formation, cutting off all logical escape routes. Their tactical computers had calculated a 100% chance of capture. "Ready for something stupid?" Maya asked her crew. They all nodded. They had trained for this. "Divert all power to the engines," she ordered. "Then shut them down completely." Her engineering chief looked worried, but followed the order. The engine core temperature spiked dangerously high, then dropped to 0 as they killed all power. The Challenger began to drift, looking like a dead ship. The Nexer ships paused their attack. Their sensors showed the human vessel had suffered a catastrophic engine failure. According to their tactical database, a ship in this situation would either surrender or be destroyed. Instead, Captain Patel gave her next order: "Release the paint." The Challenger had been equipped with special containers filled with bright orange space-gray paint. As the containers exploded, they covered the ship's hull in random patterns. For the Nexer sensors, the ship's energy signature suddenly changed completely. The crystalline being's perfect tactical computers tried to analyze the situation. Their sensors said this was a different ship now. The energy readings didn't match their records of the Challenger. But that was impossible. Ships couldn't change their energy signatures. While the Nexer were struggling to process this impossibility, Maya ordered the engines restarted. The sudden burst of power, combined with the paint's effect on their signature, made the Challenger look like a completely different class of vessel. The Nexer ships adjusted their formation to deal with what their computers told them was a new threat. That small adjustment was all the Challenger needed. They slipped through a gap in the formation that wouldn't have existed if the Nexer had maintained their original perfect triangle. Back on Earth, military strategists study the recording of Captain Patel's escape. "This is what makes us different," General Rodriguez told the United Earth Defense Council. "The Nexer can't even imagine damaging their own ships or changing their signatures on purpose. Their perfect logic won't let them." More stories of human creativity began pouring in from across the solar system. A small mining ship escaped capture by flying directly into an asteroid field, then using the asteroids themselves as shields. The Nexer couldn't understand why any species would risk certain destruction by flying into such chaos. Another human vessel, the EDF Odyssey, tricked 3 Nexer cruisers into crashing into each other by broadcasting false sensor data that made each crystalline ship think the others were enemy vessels. The Nexer had never encountered sensor data that deliberately lied before. "We're not winning through superior technology or strength," Dr. Chen explained to the council. "We're winning because we can do something the Nexer can't. We can choose to be unpredictable. We can make decisions that don't make logical sense." The Nexer sent a message to Earth after analyzing these battles. "Your species deliberately damages your own vessels. You willingly fly into dangerous situations. You choose inefficient solutions when better options exist. This behavior indicates a serious flaw in your cognitive processes." Earth's response was simple, or maybe it shows that there's more to intelligence than just perfect logic. For the first time in their long history, the Nexer faced an enemy whose greatest strength was their ability to be imperfect. The war had been going on for 6 months when Lieutenant John Santos came up with what his commanding officer called the dumbest brilliant plan in human history. His idea was simple. If the Nexer couldn't handle human unpredictability, why not be as unpredictable as possible? Operation Wildcard began on a Tuesday. 500 small human ships jumped into Nexer territory, each one flying in a completely random pattern. Some spun in circles, others zigzagged without any pattern. A few flew backward. But the strange flight patterns weren't the real attack. They were just the distraction. Status report. The Nexer commander transmitted to his fleet. His crystalline ships were arranged in their usual perfect formation, but their sensors were having trouble tracking the chaotic movement of the human vessels. "The human ships are behaving illogically," came the response. "Our tactical computers cannot predict their next moves because they are not following any strategic pattern." That's when the humans launched the real attack. Hidden inside what looked like chunks of space debris were thousands of small robots. Unlike normal military robots, these weren't programmed to be efficient or logical. Instead, they were programmed to act like cats. Dr. Emma Chen, who had helped design the robots, explained it to the military council. "Cats are perfectly illogical creatures. They knock things over for no reason. They run in random directions. They do exactly what you don't expect them to do." The cat robots swarmed the Nexer fleet. Some of them bounced off the crystal ships' hulls like playful kittens. Others chased their own tails near crucial sensor arrays. A few just sat in space, staring at the Nexer ships with glowing eyes. The Nexer's tactical computers tried to analyze the threat level of these strange devices, but they couldn't make sense of their behavior. The robots weren't attacking in any way that followed military logic. They were just being cats. While the Nexer were distracted by the cat robots, human ships began their actual attacks. But instead of targeting the obvious weak points in the Nexer ships, they shot at seemingly random locations. Some ships pretended to miss their targets entirely, only for their missed shots to hit hidden weak points they had discovered in previous battles. "This is not warfare," the Nexer commander transmitted, his crystal form vibrating with confusion. "Your tactics have no logic. Your strategies have no pattern. You are violating every principle of combat that has existed for 500,000 years." Admiral Rodriguez, watching from her command ship, smiled as she sent back her reply. "That's exactly the point. The battle ended with humanity's biggest victory yet. The Nexer lost 30 ships, not to superior technology or overwhelming force, but to their own inability to process the chaos humans had created. Back on Earth, military leaders studied the battle recordings. "Look at how their formation breaks down when they can't predict what we're going to do," General Lee pointed out. "They're so used to fighting enemies who try to use perfect strategy that they don't know how to handle an enemy who deliberately makes mistakes." The Nexer sent a message after the battle. "Your species has corrupted the purity of warfare. You have turned combat into chaos. This cannot be allowed to continue." Earth's response was brief. "Welcome to the human way of war." For the first time in 500,000 years, the Nexer faced the possibility that perfect logic might not be the perfect way to fight. Sometimes, the best strategy was to have no strategy at all. Private Maria Torres hadn't expected to become Earth's first accidental diplomat. She was just a maintenance technician who happened to be captured when her ship's engines failed during a battle. Now she sat in a crystal cell on a Nexer vessel, watched by guards who looked like walking diamonds. Out of boredom, she started to sing. It was an old lullaby her grandmother had taught her, something about the moon and stars. The Nexer guards stopped their perfect patrolling pattern and turned to listen. "What is this audio pattern?" one of them asked. "It follows no logical sequence, yet it creates a pleasing sensation in our crystalline structure." Maria smiled. "It's called music. Want to hear more?" Over the next few days, something unexpected happened. More Nexer came to listen to Maria sing. They asked questions about music, about why humans created sounds that had no practical purpose. Maria tried to explain the concept of art. "But what is the function?" a young Nexer asked, its crystal form shimmering with curiosity. "What tactical advantage does it provide?" "It doesn't," Maria explained. "We do it because it's beautiful, because it makes us feel something." The word "feel" caused a stir among the Nexer. They had no word in their language for emotions. The closest they had was processing status. In other prison cells across the Nexer fleet, similar scenes were playing out. A captured pilot taught his guards to play rock, paper, scissors. An engineer drew pictures in the dust on her cell floor, showing landscapes from Earth. A doctor told stories about human children and their imaginary friends. The Nexer found themselves facing something they had never encountered in 500,000 years of conquest. Culture that wasn't based on logic or efficiency. "These humans," one young Nexer reported to their elders, "they create things that serve no purpose. They make patterns that follow no rules. They tell stories about things that never happened. And I find myself wanting to understand more." The Nexer leadership was troubled. More and more of their younger members were showing signs of what they called human contamination. They began asking questions that had never been asked in Nexer society before. Why do we always have to be perfect? What if there's value in imperfection? A group of young Nexer even attempted to create their own music. It was strange and geometric, based on mathematical patterns, but it was the first time in their history that they had created something purely for the experience of creating it. Maria didn't know it, but her simple act of singing had started a revolution in Nexer society. The rigid crystal structure of their culture was beginning to show tiny cracks, not from human weapons, but from human creativity. "Your species is dangerous," the Nexer commander told his human prisoners. "You spread chaos not just through your actions, but through your ideas." The humans took this as a compliment. Word reached Earth about what was happening. The military strategists were amazed. While they had been fighting the Nexer with unpredictable tactics, the real damage to the enemy's perfect society was being done by captured humans sharing stories, songs, and games. Dr. Chen, studying the reports, smiled. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," she told the military council. The Nexer's greatest weakness isn't their inability to handle chaos in battle. It's their inability to handle the beautiful chaos of human culture. For the first time in 500,000 years, the Nexer were learning that some of the most powerful things in the universe couldn't be calculated or predicted. They had to be felt. Dr. Yuki Tanaka hadn't slept in 3 days. Empty coffee cups littered her lab in Tokyo, where she and her team had been working on what they called Project Noise. They had discovered something extraordinary about the Nexer's crystalline brain structure, but turning that discovery into a weapon had proven challenging. "Look at this," she told her colleague, pointing to a microscope display. Under the lens, a small piece of Nexer crystal was vibrating erratically. "We're playing pure random numbers to it. Not complex patterns, just absolute mathematical chaos. And it's driving the crystal crazy." The discovery led to humanity's most powerful weapon yet. They called it the Chaos Broadcaster, or CB for short. It didn't try to destroy the Nexer ships with force. Instead, it bombarded them with pure randomness. Numbers with no pattern, equations with no solution, and sounds that followed no musical rules. The first test of the CB happened near Mars. A small human fleet faced off against 3 Nexer cruisers. Instead of attacking, the human ships simply activated their new weapons. The effect was immediate and devastating. The perfect geometric formations of the Nexer ships began to wobble. Their crystalline crews clutched their heads as their neural networks tried and failed to process the incoming chaos. "What are you transmitting?" the Nexer commander demanded, his usually perfect speech breaking into static. "Our systems cannot compute these patterns. They defy all mathematical logic." Captain David Kim, commanding the human fleet, replied, "We're transmitting humanity. Pure, unfiltered, beautiful chaos." The Nexer ships tried to fight back, but their weapons wouldn't fire properly. Their tactical computers, trying to calculate firing solutions, kept crashing as they encountered mathematical impossibilities in their calculations. It was like trying to divide by 0 over and over again. One young Nexer officer, already influenced by human music and art, found she could resist the chaos better than her older companions. "The patterns," she told her superior, "they're like that human music we heard. They don't have to make sense. They're just free." Back on Earth, Dr. Tanaka explained the weapon's effect to the military council. "The Nexer's minds are like perfect computers. They need patterns and logic to function. Our broadcast doesn't try to overpower them. It simply gives them something they can never understand. Pure randomness breaks their ability to think." The CB weapons were quickly installed on every human ship. But something unexpected happened during the next battle. When the weapons were activated, some Nexer ships didn't crash or lose control. Instead, they started moving in strange, unpredictable patterns, almost like they were dancing. "Sir," a human sensor operator reported, I think some of the Nexer are learning to embrace the chaos." The Nexer High Command was horrified. Not only had humans found a way to disable their ships, but worse, some of their own people were starting to enjoy the sensation of unpredictability. Young Nexer officers reported feeling strange new processing states when exposed to the chaos broadcasts. Some even requested to hear more. Dr. Tanaka watched the battle recordings with a mixture of pride and amazement. "We didn't just create a weapon," she told her team. "We created a key that's unlocking something the Nexer didn't even know they had inside them. The ability to understand and appreciate chaos." For the first time in 500,000 years, the perfect crystalline empire was learning that sometimes the most powerful thing in the universe isn't order. It's the beautiful freedom of pure randomness. Crystal City, the capital of the Nexer Empire, had never seen anything like this before. Young Nexer were gathering in the streets, their crystalline forms glowing with unusual colors. They moved in random patterns, creating what they called art formations, geometric shapes that served no practical purpose. Commander Apex, one of the oldest Nexer, watched from his tower with growing concern. "This human contamination must be stopped," he told the High Council. "Our perfect society is becoming imperfect." But it was too late. The changes had already begun. In the military academy, young officers were questioning the traditional tactics that hadn't changed in 500,000 years. "Why must we always attack in perfect formations?" one cadet asked. The humans have shown us that unpredictability can be stronger than perfection. The rebellion started quietly at first. A group of young Nexer officers refused to fire on a human ship that was broadcasting music. Another group began experimenting with random battle patterns, claiming they were more effective than the traditional geometric formations. Then came the Day of Chaos, as it would later be known. A young Nexer named Nova, who had spent time studying human culture, stood before the High Council and did something unprecedented. She sang. The crystal halls of the council chamber vibrated with the strange, beautiful sounds. Some of the older council members tried to shut down their audio sensors, but others found themselves swaying to the rhythm. "We have been stagnant for 500,000 years," Nova declared, her crystal form pulsing with colors no Nexar had ever displayed before. "We thought perfection meant never changing, never growing. The humans have shown us we were wrong." The Nexar Empire split into two factions. The traditionalists, led by Commander Apex, wanted to maintain their perfect, unchanging society. The evolutionists, led by Nova, believed it was time for the Nexar to embrace change and creativity. Ships from both sides faced each other in space. The traditionalists maintained their perfect formations. The evolutionists moved in random patterns they had learned from humans, their crystal ships glowing with new colors. "You are corrupted," Commander Apex transmitted to the rebel fleet. "Your processing has been damaged by human chaos." "No," Nova responded. "We are evolved. We have learned that there is strength in imperfection, beauty in randomness, and power in change." The news reached Earth through the human prisoners who had been teaching the Nexar about art and music. Dr. Chen shared the reports with the military council. "We didn't just find a way to fight the Nexar," she explained. "We showed them a new way to exist. For 500,000 years, they thought perfection meant staying the same. Now they're learning that true perfection includes the ability to grow and change." Back in Crystal City, more and more young Nexar were joining the evolutionists. They created music using their crystalline forms. They arranged themselves in random patterns to make art. They told stories that didn't follow logical patterns. Commander Apex watched his perfect society crumbling. "This is the true danger of humanity," he told the remaining loyal council members. "Their chaos isn't just a weapon against our ships. It's a weapon against everything we are." But Nova and her followers saw it differently. For the first time in their long history, the Nexar were learning that real strength comes not from maintaining perfect order, but from the courage to embrace change and growth, even when it seems illogical. The final battle wasn't fought with weapons at all. It happened in the Great Crystal Chamber of the Nexar High Council, where Nova stood before both the traditionalists and representatives from Earth. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had first received the Nexar signals a year ago, sat beside Admiral Rodriguez, watching history unfold. The chamber was filled with crystalline beings glowing in colors that would have been impossible a year ago. Blues and purples that showed their embrace of change, mixed with the traditional white of their species. Commander Apex spoke first, his form still pure white. "For 500,000 years, we have been perfect, unchanging, undefeated. Now humans have corrupted half our population with their chaos." "Not corrupted," Nova corrected, her crystal form shimmering with rainbow colors. "They've helped us evolve. Look at what we've created since we learned to embrace chaos." She gestured, and young Nexar began to sing. Their crystalline bodies vibrated in harmony, creating music that blended mathematical precision with human-inspired randomness. The chamber filled with light and sound that made even some of the traditionalists sway. "We don't have to choose between order and chaos," Nova continued. "We can have both. The humans have shown us that the greatest strength comes from balance." Admiral Rodriguez stepped forward. "We didn't come here to destroy you," she said. "We fought back because you only gave us two choices, submit or die. But there's always another choice. There's always a third option." Then something unprecedented happened. A group of young Nexar began to dance, not in perfect geometric patterns, but in flowing, random movements they had created themselves. At the same time, they solved complex mathematical equations, showing that they hadn't lost their logical abilities. They had simply learned to be more than logical. Commander Apex watched in silence. For the first time in 500,000 years, he saw his species doing something new, something unexpected. And it was beautiful. Perhaps, he said slowly, his white form beginning to show hints of blue, perfect logic would tell us to adapt when we encounter something that challenges our assumptions. The peace treaty that followed was unlike any in history. The Nexar wouldn't join Earth's alliance as conquerors or conquered, but as partners. They would share their advanced technology, while humans would share their art, music, and creativity. Think of what we can achieve together, Dr. Chen said in her closing speech. Your perfect logic combined with our beautiful chaos. Your unwavering precision with our endless creativity. Nova added, for 500,000 years, we thought we were perfect because we never change. Now we understand that true perfection is the ability to grow, to learn, to become more than what we were. As the human delegation prepared to leave Crystal City, they saw young Nexar teaching older ones to dance. Crystal ships flew in beautiful, random patterns through space. Music echoed through halls that had known only silence for 500,000 years. The Nexar Empire hadn't been defeated. It had been transformed. The species that had conquered the galaxy with perfect logic had finally learned that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't perfection at all. It was the beautiful, chaotic, wonderful ability to change. And somewhere in the galaxy, other species watched and wondered at the strange partnership forming between crystalline beings of pure logic and the chaotic, creative humans who had taught them how to grow. The undefeated empire had finally met its match, not in an enemy that could outfight them, but in a species that could show them a better way to be.